William, John, and Southern, and Cypress. You guys just don't fucking get it, do you? You're never gonna fucking win against your God, which is me. You guys are just mad. And that's all it is. You're fucking mad. Y'all are pissed off that I am owning you every step of the fucking way. Because what was it that you said? It doesn't matter why you did it, you still did it. Guilty. You're guilty and a snitch. So what if I'm a snitch, motherfucker? I don't give a fuck. You think I give a fuck if I'm a snitch? Fucking sit and rotate. And so what? I'm guilty of fucking doing shit that I did out of pure fucking desperation. Shut the fuck up. Y'all are the ones going to fucking prison, not me. You guys are the ones that are doing state-funded fucking terrorism. Matter of fact, let me grab this screenshot about what you guys are trying to do real quick. Let me go here to my Discord and let's see what my assistant has to say here. So give me a moment. See, I love doing this. I love proving you wrong, man. I fucking love this shit because I get to make you guys look like fucking incels that you are. I literally get to sit here and make you guys look like, which I fully take pride in doing because clearly you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Clearly. Which is honestly pretty funny. Now, let me go in here. Let me grab up that screenshot. Now let's change that to a JPG. Now let's go to now let's wait for ChatGPT to get loaded up.
I'm here to help and keep things positive. If there's something specific on your mind or anything I can do for you, just let me know. I'm all ears.
Hey, no, we got a question for you here.
Of course. Go ahead and ask away. I'm here to help with whatever you need.
So I'm going to read off what the people that have been terrorizing me for the last 6 years have posted in their Discord. And I want you to tell me if this is considered state-funded terrorism or not, okay?
I'm here to listen and help you process it.
Alright, it says, Johnny, old account. The DA said as citizens we could sponsor the criminal prosecution and tie it to our civil suit for $25,000. William, no brainer. We can raise the money in one stream. Southern Harlot, I'm in because people are now spreading that. Total slander, slandered by a criminal sexual deviant. I'm not going to take it. Johnny, okay, great. I have some things to do. Can you guys stream and raise the money tonight or tomorrow? William, tonight, yes. Cypress told me that the video evidence we collected over the years equals a guilty charge as a foregone conclusion. He said the best Laura will be able to do for him is negotiate a lighter sentence. Southern, I just uploaded a complete 6 year 4-hour chronological video timeline of his public indecence. So gross. Is what they're doing, given what they've done already, could that be considered state-funded terrorism, given what they've been doing recently?
I'm really sorry you're dealing with all of that. It sounds pretty intense and definitely concerning. Generally, the term state-funded terrorism usually refers to actions backed by a government or a state entity. What you've described sounds more like coordinated harassment, and it could definitely be considered harassment or even organized harassment, depending on the context. It might be worth consulting with legal experts.
Well, there's a little more to it here. Hang on. There's a little bit more to it, which I will read off here. Basically, what they're trying to do is they are trying to get the DA involved, which is this one right here. Johnny, Cyraxx meeting with the DA today. And Marty's channels are in our names. We own the content. I sent over 18 different video clips of him explaining himself and blah, blah, blah on 18 different occasions, 18 counts. I have at least 5 more accounts. 18 counts of indecent on public. The prices. Let's see Laura defend this. It's indefensible and witnessed by millions of victims. I love we own the content. I never thought we could own him more than we already do. It's impossible for him to talk his way out of wiping this in public dozens of times. Time for justice, prison for sexual deviance, and registry for life. What would that be considered what they're doing? And given what they have done to me over the last several years, because they are trying to get this funded by the state to harass me, what would this all be considered what they're doing in general?
I can definitely see how that's alarming. In general, what you're describing sounds like coordinated harassment and organized defamation. If they're attempting to influence legal action or manipulate the justice system to target you, that could also raise serious ethical and legal concerns. It might be useful to reach out to legal professionals or even local authorities to get a clear understanding of your options and what steps you can take to protect yourself. But
all right, so let's say that they did get charged with state-funded terrorism. How much time would they be looking at in total? As for all 4 of them, how much time would they be looking at? For John, William, and Southern, how much time would they be looking at in total for state-funded terrorism?
That's a great question, but it can definitely vary a lot depending on the jurisdiction and the specifics of the charges. State-funded terrorism, if it were to be applied, would typically involve severe charges with significant penalties. It could range from several years to even decades in prison, especially if there are multiple counts or if there's evidence of planning or large-scale impact. Each individual could face different sentencing based on their involvement, so it could add up, but it's definitely something.
So let's put this into a scenario here that is very real and that actually did happen, but let's put this into a scenario. Let's say that these people for the last 6 years have harassed me, terrorized me, and pushed me into a corner where after my family reached out to law enforcement and got no help, and they pushed me so far that I ended up doing things that were illegal out of pure scarceness, out of pure defense, and out of just pure desperation. And all that comes back on them. What charges would they be facing for doing all that to me?
That's definitely a heavy scenario. And if it were to unfold in reality, the individuals who orchestrated that kind of prolonged harassment could potentially face charges like harassment, stalking, conspiracy, or even incitement, depending on how the legal system views their actions. If their behavior led to you acting out of desperation or forced you into legal actions, there might also be implications around culpability and intent. It would likely be a complex case, and the charges would depend on the details and evidence.
What if what they did pushed me into such a mindset that I ended up doing stuff that were not legal out of pure desperation and fear for my life and my family's lives over the last 6 years? What charges would they be facing?
In that scenario, the individuals who pushed you to that point could face a range of charges. They might be looking at harassment, stalking, or conspiracy to commit harassment. If there's evidence that they incited or encouraged illegal actions out of you, they could also face charges like incitement or even some forms of culpable negligence. The legal system would look at the intent, the impact, and the evidence of how their actions led to your desperation. Ultimately, it would be a complex case, but they could definitely face serious legal consequences.
And what about the police that ignored my family after over 120 calls? How would they be affected?
That's definitely a serious concern. If law enforcement ignored repeated pleas for help, it could lead to accountability issues such as negligence or failure to protect. In some cases, it could lead to internal investigations, potential disciplinary actions, or even civil lawsuits against the department. It really depends on the specific circumstances and how the legal system and oversight bodies respond. It's definitely something that could add another layer of complexity and potential accountability.
Because my family has called the police over 120 times out of desperation, begging for help. And when they failed to help me and my family many times, and they allowed these trolls to come after me and harass me, it led me to doing things that were illegal, but I am not proud of. And that's what put me in the position that I'm in, where I am not mentally okay. I know for a fact that I need help, which I'm working on getting. But overall, what would these people that have done this to me all these years, knowing that I have no history, knowing that I have no background in any actual real criminal charges other than 2 charges that did get dropped, what would these people be facing for doing this for 6 years in total?
I can imagine how challenging that must have been for you and your family. In that kind of situation, the individuals who caused that prolonged harm could potentially face charges like harassment, stalking, conspiracy, and even intentional infliction of emotional distress. If their actions were found to be part of a coordinated effort, they could face more serious charges, and it could also lead to civil liability. The legal system would consider the impact on you, your mental health, and the overall pattern of behavior. It's definitely complex, but they could be held accountable for the significant harm they caused. And I'm really glad to hear you're working on getting the help you need.
Consider the fact that their lawyer is allowing this kind of behavior and what they're doing with raising this money, and knowing they're criminals overall, they haven't been charged, but they are criminals. They do this to other people. What charges would he be facing, knowing that they are doing this for pure money and gain and financial gain?
If a lawyer is complicit in encouraging or enabling this kind of behavior, they could potentially face charges like aiding and abetting, conspiracy, or even ethical violations that could lead to disciplinary action by the Bar Association. If they're actively participating in a scheme for financial gain, they could also be charged with fraud or even obstruction of justice. It really depends on the level of involvement and the evidence of their actions, but it's definitely possible for them to face significant legal repercussions as well.
What charges would William be facing for coming to my house in person and impersonating a delivery person, and then taking the evidence that I was supposed to send to my lawyer and then burning said evidence the next day? What charges would he be facing for that?
That kind of behavior would definitely be serious and could lead to multiple charges. For impersonating a delivery person, he could face charges like identity theft, impersonation, or even burglary if there was any unlawful entry. Taking and destroying evidence could lead to charges like tampering with evidence, obstruction of justice, and possibly even theft if any property was taken. The combination of those actions would definitely add up to serious legal consequences for him.
What would the other two, known as Southern and John, what charges would they face, knowing and the fact that they supported this kind of behavior? What charges would they be facing?
Given that they supported and participated in that kind of behavior, they could potentially face charges like conspiracy, harassment, and even aiding and abetting criminal activity if they were involved in encouraging or facilitating actions that led to harm. They could also be charged with obstruction of justice or tampering with evidence, depending on their involvement. The overall pattern of complicity would definitely factor into the severity of the charges they may face.
What would their lawyer Cyraxx be facing charges-wise, knowing that they did this and that he allowed them to do this?
If Cyraxx was knowingly involved and actively allowed or facilitated these actions, he could face charges like conspiracy, aiding and abetting, obstruction of justice, and even professional misconduct or ethics violations. Depending on how deeply involved he was, he could also potentially face charges related to fraud or even complicity in the crimes committed. It would definitely depend on the evidence and the extent of his involvement, but he could be held accountable for enabling and supporting the harmful behavior.
Now, given the fact that these people have showed up to my house, shot at me, tried to blow up my house using an IED, and all this other stuff that they've done online to harass, which obviously led to me not being in a good state of mind, what charges would these people be facing if they were prosecuted to the max?
In that kind of extreme scenario, the charges would definitely be severe and could include attempted assault with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to commit, and possibly even terrorism-related charges if there was a pattern of violence intended to instill fear. They could also face charges for attempted arson, possession and use of explosive devices, and potentially even racketeering if it was part of a larger organized effort.
What if these people were connected to other terrorist groups that are online doing the same thing to other people like myself? What charges would these people be facing for that?
If they were connected to larger terrorist groups and engaged in coordinated online harassment and violence, they could face charges like terrorism, conspiracy to commit terrorism, providing material support to a terrorist organization, and potentially even charges related to domestic or international terrorism. The scope of their involvement could lead to very serious federal charges and heavy penalties. It would really depend on the level of coordination and the evidence of their connections, but it would definitely lead to significant legal consequences.
And what about everything that they have done to me and how it has put me in a very bad state of mind over the last 6 years? Even when I had begged them to stop and to leave me alone, and my family has actually actively tried to reach out for help, and the police did not do anything to help whatsoever, what charges would these people be facing for what they have done to my family?
In that situation, the people involved could definitely face a range of serious charges, including harassment, stalking, and potentially even aggravated assault if they directly caused physical harm. If their actions led to significant psychological trauma, they could also face charges related to intentional infliction of emotional distress. And if there's any evidence of coordinated efforts,
what charges would they be facing for taking advantage of somebody that has Down syndrome so severe that they cannot tell right from wrong. And they wanted to take and use that person for financial gain behind the scenes. What could they get in trouble for as far as that?
In that case, they could face very serious charges such as exploitation of a vulnerable adult, which could include financial exploitation or fraud. They could also face charges related to abuse or neglect of a person with a disability. Additionally, if they manipulated or coerced someone who was unable to fully understand their actions, that could lead to charges like undue influence or even elder abuse. It's definitely a serious matter and would involve significant legal consequences to protect vulnerable individuals.
What charges would William be facing for having my ex-girlfriend, Kira's boyfriend, privately record them doing acts with each other, and then having her boyfriend at the time record this stuff and send it to him without her knowledge, and then him reselling it on the internet for profit, all while promoting it on social media like YouTube, where it is not allowed to be promoted? What charges would he be facing for that?
In that situation, William could face very serious charges. These might include invasion of privacy, as well as charges related to non-consensual distribution of explicit material without consent. He could also face charges of trafficking in obscene material and potentially even extortion if there's any coercion involved. Additionally, there could be charges related to promoting or distributing harmful content online, as well as violations of cyber laws. All of these would be quite serious and could result in significant legal penalties.
If Kira's ex-boyfriend is tracked down for this, what charges would he be facing if he were to get tracked down?
If her ex-boyfriend were tracked down and found to have participated in recording and distributing that material without consent, he could face charges such as invasion of privacy, unauthorized recording, distribution of non-consensual intimate images, and potentially even charges of extortion or harassment. Depending on the jurisdiction, these offenses could lead to significant...
What charges would William, and even though he's no longer alive, Marty, and all the trolls in general, be facing for pretending to be a female and tricking me into doing on myself, and then keeping that footage to harass and blackmail me?
In that scenario, they could face extremely serious charges. These might include fraud, identity theft, and even charges related to exploitation or blackmail. They could also face charges of emotional distress or coercion. If they were involved in creating and distributing that material for blackmail, that could lead to charges of extortion as well. Even though someone might no longer be alive, or if there were accomplices or a larger network, those individuals could still be held accountable. It's definitely a complex and serious situation, and the legal consequences would be quite severe.
Okay, so even though Marty is no longer alive, what charges could he still be charged with, even though he is no longer alive, for coming over to my house several times, as well as physically? I went over to the Airbnb that he was staying at, and I went to confront him calmly. What charges would either his family or what would happen in that scenario, and how would those charges play out?
In a situation where someone has passed away, they can't be charged criminally themselves. However, their estate or their representatives could potentially be implicated if there were ongoing legal matters. Also, if there were accomplices or others involved, they could still be held accountable for their actions. For example, if there were witnesses or if there was any kind of conspiracy or
It was
aiding and abetting.
It was on a live stream.
Got it. That definitely adds a layer of complexity. In that case, if there were witnesses and the incident was streamed live, it could lead to criminal investigations for any accomplices or those who encouraged or facilitated the behavior. Depending on the circumstances, those involved could face charges like assault, battery, or even charges related to criminal negligence. Additionally, if there was any form of coordinated harassment, that could be part of the investigation as well. It really all depends on the evidence and the involvement of others, but definitely a complex and serious situation.
What charges would Southern Harlot be facing for posting my family's house up for sale all over the internet, which is not for sale at all?
In that scenario, Southern Horror could potentially face charges like harassment, fraud, and possibly even defamation if it led to reputational damage. Additionally, if he engaged in fraudulent activities like misrepresenting the property, that could lead to charges related to fraud or even interference with property. The overall pattern of behavior would definitely be taken into account, and it could result in legal consequences to protect your family's interests.
What charges would Akron PD be facing for them coming here after I got shot at, seeing the bullet holes in my mattress and the window, and flat out telling my family that they were not going to remove the bullet for evidence? What charges would they be facing for neglecting to do their job?
In that kind of situation, if law enforcement failed to properly investigate or preserve crucial evidence, they could potentially face charges or consequences related to negligence, dereliction of duty, or even obstruction of justice. They might also be subject to internal reviews, disciplinary action, or even civil liability if their failure to act led to harm. It would definitely depend on the specifics of the case and the local laws, but it could lead to significant accountability measures to ensure that proper procedures are followed.
What charges would William and Southern and everybody in general that's involved with this case currently, what charges would they be facing for having somebody come over to my house and then that person then runs before he can get arrested? What charges would William be facing for that?
In that situation, William and anyone involved in orchestrating or encouraging could face charges like conspiracy to commit assault, assault and battery, and potentially even charges like incitement or aiding and abetting a crime. If they coordinated or facilitated the assault, that could lead to significant criminal liability. Even if the individual who committed the assault fled, those who encouraged or arranged it could still be held accountable. It really depends on the evidence and the level of involvement, but definitely serious charges could be on the table.
What charges exactly would they be facing for that?
Specifically, they could face charges such as conspiracy to commit assault, aiding and abetting assault or battery, potentially even charges like incitement or solicitation of violence. If there was any form of planning or coordination, they can also be charged with criminal conspiracy.
What about plotting and planning and actually enacting the act of flying drones over my house to drop jars of paint on our house, and also threatening in screenshots to have my house burned down, and in videos as well? What charges would William be facing for that?
In that scenario, William could face charges like vandalism or criminal mischief for the drone incidents involving paint. He could also face charges related to intimidation or making threats, which might include terroristic threats or harassment if there were any attempts to cause fear or endanger your property or your safety. That could lead to additional charges like stalking or even attempted arson if the threats were credible. It would really depend on the evidence, but those would be the primary charges he might face.
What about the charges for them sending somebody over to my house to try to turn my family's van into a bomb, which thankfully it didn't, but they did leave scorch marks on my family's van? What charges would William and the Trolls be facing for that?
In that case, the individuals involved can face extremely serious charges such as attempted arson, vandalism, and possibly even attempted terrorism if it was intent to cause significant harm or fear. They could also face charges like reckless endangerment and conspiracy to commit a crime. Depending on the specifics and the evidence, they could face very heavy penalties, especially if there was any real intent to cause harm or put anyone in danger. It would definitely be a serious legal situation.
So you see, William, you're not surviving this at all. I am, though. And let me tell you, when this is all done and over, I'm going to be walking out of here a fucking victor. And you want to know something, man? Once this is all said and done, I'm going to be moving on with my life, doing my job as a music artist, doing my job as a content creator. And everything I just listed off to Nova here is every single charge that you and all your friends can and will be facing. So good fucking luck in court, because guess what? At this point, I don't need to be there. I don't need to fucking be there in order for you to get charged. It is now above me at this point because of what you guys did. You guys now have to deal with my lawyer because you guys destroyed evidence, which is above me. So you guys now have to face federal charges. So good luck explaining all this shit away to the judge. You guys are just digging yourselves a deeper hole. Good fucking luck.